Well, good afternoon, my good friends out there in the internet land. It's so good to see you again. My name is Jeff DeVerter. It seems like it was just yesterday that we got to spend some time together. Well, you know what? It was. Hey, I am the Chief Technology Evangelist over here at Rackspace Technology, and I'm going to welcome you to Rackspace Live. As you know, we have two shows we do out here on the interwebs. First one is a Solve Live, all thought leadership. But then every now and again, I come to tell you about some very specific things about Rackspace and some of our offerings we have and the impact that's having. So I'm telling you about Rackspace specifically. That's what this is, Rackspace Live, folks. Welcome to the program. I would love it if you would tell me who is here. You can just introduce yourself. You know the routine. Make your comments down below there, and I will do my best to call you out. And got a great guest to visit with you here today. His name's Ed Kerr. He's a senior product manager over here at Rackspace. Really a super smart guy. We're going to get into a really cool topic here shortly. But before we do that, I always like to start with a little bit of news, and I think this plays well into what we're gonna talk about ultimately here today as well. And let's make sure I push all of the right buttons. So let's start here. David Lithicum. If you've watched my program here any amount of time, you know that I tend to follow a lot of what Dave has to say, and he's got a new article over in eWeek. And that article, it says best practices for multi-cloud that the cloud providers may not know or want you to know. It's a really good article. And hey, Rashid, glad you're here from LA. Nice. So, but I'd encourage you to go check this article out. It will tell you, why multi-cloud is good, and there really are some good reasons for it. You can get best of breed technologies. You're not vendor locked in. A lot of reasons. Now there are some reasons not to do it, or cautionary tales along the way as well. And so you may want to take that into account. They call out very well inside of the article. So go ahead and check that out. Hey, Rohan, glad you're here from India. Holy moly, you're up late or up early. Never can tell the difference. 12:02 in India. Okay, it's not that bad, I guess, but it's still pretty early. Glad you're here. All right. So with that, guys, I want to bring up my guest today. My guest is a good friend here at Rackspace. His name is Ed Kerr, and why is he not coming up on the screen? Hang on. Where did he go? I have a nice little placard for him.
I think I'm here.
Right there. Oh, I didn't push the button. There we are. All right. Anyway, look, I got your picture.
There we go.
You.
I think it is me, yeah. Well, it's either me or my twin. I've got an evil twin who is not in the private cloud world, doesn't like VMware. I don't associate with him much.
That sounds like a lot of very negative characteristics.
That's right. That's why I don't talk to him anymore.
Hey, Ed, so I was just talking about this article of multi-cloud, and a lot of people make the misconception that when we talk about multi-cloud, we're only talking about, hey, I got some Google and some AWS, or some Azure and some Google. But private cloud always fits into that multi-cloud story, does it not?
Yeah, absolutely, right? So we're in an era right now where software as a solution is taking the market by storm, and most of the major providers, even if it's whether it's VMware, Azure, or AWS, are providing SaaS-based solutions that will allow us to deliver what I would call cloudy outcomes across the entirety of a customer's hybrid cloud workloads, including the private cloud.
Right, and so there are still, everybody thinks in this cloud-first world. Again, I want to dispel some myths. We're going to start by dispelling myths. The private cloud is alive and well. First of all, so
Yeah.
we see it growing at Rackspace on a daily basis. The market sees it growing as a place for workloads. Let me just ask you the question, Ed. Why are companies still utilizing a private cloud environment? We'll talk about that in the context of a VMware-based environment when the hyperscale cloud, is growing like it's growing. Why private cloud?
Yeah. So one, obviously there are reasons why the hyperscalers are successful, and that's because they scale at an incredible level. And so there will always be certain things, niche edge cases that the public cloud might be the best place to do a particular workload. But in terms of the private cloud and why people tend to stay there, that's actually a twofold question, in my opinion. The first part of that is that everybody decided to wake up 10 years ago and say, maybe not 10 years ago, but let's say 5 years ago, and say, I'm going to the public cloud, end of story. And for a large percentage of those people, They went through that journey and realized it was disruptive, expensive, and difficult to do. There was a lot of tech debt and people debt that was had to be managed, and these companies either weren't able to or willing to get rid of that and replace it with cloud native versions. Same with
Right.
the applications. It's very difficult to transform an application because, yeah, I can move to the public cloud, but if I don't take advantage of the cloud native solutions there, then honestly, costs could actually be higher on the public cloud. And so I would say the first answer is a large majority of people just never made it, even though they wanted to go there, because the reality set in that it's not easy to do. And the second part of that is probably where Elastic Engineering comes in, which is a product that I created. Is that at the end of the day, people are finding out that as these SaaS solutions start to take hold in the market, as companies like VMware start to really push what they call hybrid cloud freedom, that they can actually get a lot of the same cloudy outcomes right where they're at and still get the advantages of a private cloud, which include enhanced security. PCI compliance tends to be easier on private cloud.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of different reasons why a customer might not want to go to the public space. They might want to have a more self-contained environment. And since they don't have to give up a lot of those cloudy outcomes anymore, why not?
Why not save some money, get those great outcomes? Now, regardless of what what the specific workloads are, there's always an aspect of things have to be managed. They have to be maintained. They have to be taken care of. They have to be grown, shepherded along the way. And that's really when we start to talk about service and support. That's where we get into what we're here to really talk about today, and that's Rackspace Elastic Engineering for VMware. So let's start with the definition. What is Elastic Engineering for VMware from Rackspace Technology?
Honestly, the easiest way to explain it is to think of it in two sections. There's one product, but two ways to think about it. The first way is the delivery capabilities. And from a design perspective, when I was creating the offering, I wanted to create a set of delivery capabilities that were, supported a broad range of outcomes. That's things like migrations. Do we use, what tools do we use for migrations? Can we help customers with automation? How can we make architectural decisions? How can we increase reliability? How can we tackle security? And so from a delivery capabilities perspective, Elastic Engineering focuses on delivering, at least for VMware, focuses on delivering answers to those questions using the VMware stack. The second way to look at Elastic Engineering is in terms of the support model. And so Rackspace has a slew of Elastic Engineering offerings that use different technologies to support different outcomes. But what unifies them all is that support model. And the support model is where we start to get into what we really believe is the unique value prop. And that's where you talk about things like embracing the Elastic Cloud model, not just in resources. Like it's great that I can buy compute or RAM or storage from the cloud, but I can't always buy my people and expertise in these fractional ways. And so Elastic Engineering as a product was designed to enable and embrace the Elastic Cloud model to the degree that even the people and services that support the cloud or private cloud are fractional as well and are elastic. And so really the definition for Elastic Engineering, when you take those two components, is it is the fractional deployment of Rackspace's expertise and people within the VMware stack to achieve a broad range of outcomes.
All right. I love that as a definition, a fractional way to consume rackers, if you will, to create a broad range of those outcomes. So Rashid has a really interesting question because you and I are bantering about talking about public and private cloud, and he's asking the question from a Rackspace point of view, what is a private cloud? Because in some cases it could be running on multi-tenant or shared infrastructure. And the lines really are pretty gray there. From my point of view, if it's running in if it's running in a hyperscaler, sure sounds like it's public cloud. If it's a VMware implementation on single tenant or in some cases shared infrastructure, it sure feels like private cloud. Ed, would you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree. And so one to point out, there are definitely multi-tenant environments in the private cloud, but Rackspace even has dedicated environments that customers can live in for additional security, removing noisy neighbor complaints, things like that. So there are different ways that you can kind of approach this. But I guess to fundamentally answer the question, what is the difference between the private and public cloud? My thought is that the lines are definitely being blurred. And there may not be much of a difference anymore, but that's actually the point, right? That's exactly why Elastic Engineering for VMware is such a powerful offering in the space, because there are a lot of customers who, as I described earlier, are stranded from their perspective. From a 5-year ago conversation, they are stranded in the private cloud. And so because of cost and all of these other things that we talked about. So am my videos okay here? Sorry, me.
Well, you're there, but you were frozen. Oh, and look, we lost your video. So I'm going to tap dance for just 1 second. Ed's had some snafus with his video a minute ago, but I'll just go on and in fact, if we could bring up the link back to Rackspace Elastic Engineering, if somebody wants to go and learn more, this is where they would go to do that, because it ultimately, guys, it's about the infrastructure. You know, in the old days, it was so easy for us to sort of set and forget infrastructure and just let those applications run. But those applications, first of all, the apps need to evolve on a near daily basis. And there are opportunities for the infrastructure to be managed and maintained on a daily basis as well. And that's really where that elastic engineering comes in. So that you've got this dedicated team who, Ed, let's talk now for a second about that team, that pod-based design. Why don't you tell the team, the group about that?
Yep. And just to finish that thought, though, I was going to say why exactly it is important, I think, to go to the private cloud or to talk about the differences is that here, there are a lot of people who can't go to the public cloud for some reason or other. So fundamentally, you have to ask, why did they even want to go in the first place? And that was because they wanted to achieve cloudy outcomes. And so now we're able to provide those cloudy outcomes using, and to answer your question, Jeff, a group or a pod. So think of this pod as a group of individuals who have different expertise. So a pod will consist of three, categories. You'll have an engagement manager, you have architects, and you'll have engineers. Now, engineers and architects are relatively common terms to throw around. So from an architecture perspective, they're designing the solution. From an engineering perspective, they're obviously implementing that solution. The engagement manager is a unique offering, and it's really where we find a lot of value for our customers. The engagement embedding themselves in the customer team and using the tools that we have here at Rackspace and the agile methodology to drive consumption of the backlog and make sure that the customers' teams and our teams are consistently integrated and moving towards the company's larger goals.
We think that Rackspace, this is such a huge differentiator in how managed services actually is realized with our customers. Again, it's not this responsive, hey, did something break or you need something? We're here. Otherwise, we're just going to be quiet. No, it's this core team of nine-ish that are dedicated to our customers one by one and able to serve them on a weekly basis in their weekly sprints to make sure that they are evolving and growing with their infrastructure. Hey, Ed's back.
Yeah, we were just talking about how if this happened, we were going to say this was like a planned event. At this point, the cat's out of the bag. It's not a planned event, and I apologize for that. But no, in all seriousness, the elastic engineering model and what we were talking about in the composition of the teams, you've got these three roles, and they all work together, not just to achieve Rackspace's SLAs or whatever thing that we're bound by, but the sole purpose of that team is to achieve outcomes for our customers. And they do that by embedding themselves into the customer organization and working alongside their teams, be an extension of those teams. And that's really what differentiates this offer from our traditional managed service offerings or our professional services offerings, because those offerings play on a different level. So MSPs are concerned about, managed services are concerned about SLAs. You send a ticket, I've got 15 minutes to respond, and I've done my job, right? Like I do have to do more, but I've at least met its criteria and legally I'm good to go. From a professional services perspective, it's an SOW. I sign it, I go do the work, and then you'd leave me alone. We don't interact. Elastic Engineering plays in the middle, and it says, let's take the positive elements of the managed services model and work alongside our customers, but let's not focus on SLAs and let's focus on outcomes and projects and help our customers get the most out of their platforms. And that's really what makes Elastic Engineering unique when you compare them to those two offerings.
I know, because while an SLA is interesting and we should have expectations about uptime and availability, it really, at the end of the day, isn't game changing for an organization. But when you have this do with approach, this outcomes driven relationship where, hey, by next Friday, by the Friday after that, by the Friday after that, this is what our new reality is going to be like. Well, you've got these architects and engineers working squarely towards that series of outcomes. It's very impressive.
Yeah, that's exactly right, Jeff. And I mean, the idea is that those priorities should and could change, right? If we get a traditional ticket and it comes in and it says, we want you to do a thing, we do the thing. Right. End of story. But what if a more important thing came up? How do we reprioritize that? In a traditional managed services model, it's very difficult to stop, to change, streams. But with Elastic Engineering, since we're bound by the backlog that customers assign to us, we can actually change those priorities, almost instantly. So as they would like to speed up their outcomes or slow them down or change them, we're able to flex along with that.
And it's also important to kind of call out. We talk about these priorities changing. Who's to know more about the VMware infrastructure and the software even itself than the experts. So it's not like we would look to the customer to have lots of great input in this area. But again, it's how can we tweak that infrastructure in a way that drives business outcomes in ways that managed services companies really were never equipped to do before, and what is so unique about the Rackspace Elastic Engineering offering.
Oh man, that is a great point. So our traditional services will have spheres of support, is what we call them,
Yeah.
and they go to a certain level, and that's great. But if you think of this in terms of a RACI, everything that is outside of that spheres of support, the customer is now accountable and responsible for. And so Rackspace normally, or traditional services, don't play in those spaces. Elastic Engineering flips that script and says, we'll work all the things that you are normally accountable and responsible for alongside with you, and we're going to help you achieve those outcomes, and we're going to help you do that in a collaborative and streamlined way. So yeah,
It's
great
impressive
point.
stuff. So it's a great offering. So what sort of problems? Let's be specific. What are some of the things you're seeing? Our teams and our pods doing for customers.
Yeah. So let's talk about what I mean by cloudy outcomes, because we talk about hybrid cloud freedom or cloudiness anywhere. So those cloudy outcomes, as an example, we're helping customers achieve cloud-like consumption of resources because we've got platforms like RSVC that allow you to consume compute, et cetera, like on demand. And now we're also pairing that with Elastic Engineering for VMware to help them consume them more intelligently using automation. So we use tools like vRealize automation and orchestration to help them create servers more efficiently. We're using tools like vRealize operations dashboards to help them understand their environment and manage resources more efficiently. We're also helping them audit their environments using that same tool set. And then we're also helping them play in the kind of frontier spaces of Kubernetes, leveraging technology like Tanzu. And so all of these things, again, that would have previously been kind of like, hey, we can't play in this space because that's out of the
It's
scope of
outside
our.
of the spheres of support.
Yeah, now we're saying let's play together. Let's figure out how we can achieve outcomes using all these tools. And all of those things are cloudy outcomes that you can have right where you're at. There is no need to go to the cloud to get Kubernetes or automation or CI/CD pipeline automation. None of that is required to go to the cloud.
No, it's all available today in the modern private cloud. It's all available with the right support model, like what you have from Rackspace with Elastic Engineering for VMware Cloud. If you want to learn more, we've posted the link in the chat. We'll bring it up on the screen again. Would love for you guys to go check that out. Ed, anything else that we're missing here that we feel like the audience needs to hear about Rackspace Elastic Engineering for VMware?
Yeah, I think the last thing I'd say is that Elastic Engineering, if I could kind of pull back the curtain of what went into designing it, we wanted to fully embrace the cloud elastic model right where private cloud workloads live today. And so that's the message that we really want to carry to market, because there are a whole slew of outcomes that we can help you achieve. But what really matters isn't like, can we do all of these things, but can we do it in a way that meets your business needs and does it such that, like, if your business is doing well today, you can choose to accelerate project timelines by increasing your hours. If your business is currently experiencing some budget constraints and it needs to scale back, we can delay timelines and scale back hours. And it's bringing that expertise in this fractional way that is really critical in today's post-COVID marketplace. And so that's really the message that we want to get out there.
Right. It's a level of flexibility I've rarely seen from any managed service company, even Rackspace of years old. It was, Ed, you've been around here long enough. And this, in older models, it was, hey, let's figure out a service level. Let's sign up to a 12, 24, or 36-month contract, and off we go to the races. And let's hope nothing goes bump in the night.
As if nothing would change in 3 years, right?
That's right, because nothing should change. It's infrastructure. At least that's what it was back in 2012. But now it's a totally new world. So the ability and it's a realistic approach to it, because us in technology, I mean, we think that it should be the only thing that gets worked on, right? It's where our focus is, where our heart is. But businesses still need to operate, and so sometimes there's more of a focus elsewhere, and maybe a little less focus on on that infrastructure and on those applications from a month-to-month standpoint. So with us, flex it up, flex it down based on what's working inside of your organization.
That's right.
Well, folks, it's been a great conversation with Ed here today. Would love for you to head over to the link that we put into the links down below to learn more about Rackspace Elastic Engineering for VMware Cloud. You can also see it on your screen if you want to screen grab that real quick. It will be in the description of this video once we finish up. But thank you so much for spending part of your lunchtime with us, or your evening, or the late night if you're in India. And check out Rackspace Elastic Engineering for VMware Cloud, built by this very super smart gentleman, Mr. Ed Kerr. Ed, thanks so
Thank you,
much for being
Jeff.
on the program today.
Yeah, no problem. And if anybody has any questions, add me on LinkedIn, and I'm happy to talk about Elastic Engineering with anybody.
Yeah, you are. All right, everybody. Have an amazing afternoon, and we'll see you back actually tomorrow at 8:30 Central Time in the morning for another Solve Live. Great content set for tomorrow, so we'll see you then.